Hey everybody, this is Aaron Rosari. I'm your philosophy instructor. In this video, I would just simply like to overview what philosophers refer to as the mind-body problem or the problem of consciousness. This is the topic that is addressed in the first two readings that you've had for this course. The article entitled "What is Consciousness," which was written by the editors of your philosophy anthology. And of course, Frank Jackson's rather sophisticatedly titled Epiphenomenal Qualia. Don't be intimidated by the title. We're not even really going to deal with the epiphenomenal part. Okay, now, what the mind-body problem or the problem of consciousness is a set of puzzles regarding how our conscious mental experiences seeing the color blue, hearing a clapping noise, feeling maybe like a smooth texture or something like that. The content of those experiences, the feels, the touches, the smells, the sights, that's what philosophers refer to as qualia. So there's a question about how those qualia are related to our brains and our overall physiology and the physical environment around us. So for example, let's say you have an incoming wavelength of light, the sort of wavelength that when it hits the typical person's retina, it affects certain eye cones, certain patterns of brain activity are then triggered. You might even be able to see that on like an EEG or something like that. Uh, and accompanying all of those physical happenings, you'll see the color red. Okay. Now, some philosophers think seeing the color red is nothing above and beyond what is happening physiologically in one's brain, central nervous system, as it is triggered by certain environmental conditions. Okay. Those people are called physicalists. They think conscious mental experience is nothing above and beyond this kind of brain and physiological experience. Competing with the physicalist is the dualist. Now, there's actually a lot of different types of dualist, so I'm just going to define it rather generically. The dualist is a person who thinks that either the human mind, the thing doing the thinking and experiencing, or at least specific conscious mental states are not merely brain and other physiological or physical states. Okay? Now, why might one be a dualist? Okay? So just close your eyes for a second and just imagine three colors, red, blue, green. If you prefer sound, hearing a clapping noise, hearing a shrill buzzer go off. Okay. Now, if someone were to look at your brain while you were either imagining or hearing those sounds live, they wouldn't see those colors in your brain, right? So if you're looking up at a blue sky with the sun in it, you're having that blue imagery, the yellow imagery. You're having an experience of the sky with those colors, but there's nothing in your brain that's blue or that's yellow. If you're simply imagining those colors, just in some ways that's easier to deal with. I sit here, imagine a blue sky, the sun's out. While you're imagining that and you're seeing that imagery, there's nothing in your brain that's blue or yellow, or at least that's kind of how it appears, right? But if those experiences simply were identical to what your brain is and what it's doing, um, then there should be a blue in there and a yellow in there somewhere, right? If the mental state or the conscious state simply were the brain state, and the mental state or the conscious state is blue or yellow, then we should be able to locate a physical state that's blue or yellow, since the claim would be that they're the same thing. Okay? So dualist arguments proceed basically on the premise that our conscious mental states, like seeing blue, they have properties that our brain states lack. Okay. Now, Frank Jackson, he gives just kind of like a couple little what are called thought experiments to kind of drive home this point. So he says, picture Fred. Fred would, whenever there's evidence, strong evidence that when Fred sees red, like something like this, uh, he's not seeing the red we see. Now Jackson is a little vague about this, but let's say it's unclear if Jackson is picturing Fred seeing two totally different colors than our red, or he's seeing our red and then like another color on top of that that the rest of us don't experience. Let's go with that second option. Let's say Fred, when he sees like this distinctive color, he not only often sees what we see as red, he also sees a totally different color altogether that he can't really describe to us. Okay. Um, and let's say when we know Fred does this because you can give him a pile of red tomatoes and you can blindfold and you can say, Fred, sort these, and he'll sort them a certain way. Put a blindfold on him, shuffle the tomatoes, take the blindfold off, and he'll sort them in the exact same piles. And then he'll tell you, I can do that so easily because I don't see them all as the same color. I see some as one color, some as another. And then Jackson says, look, let's say you looked at, Fred's optical system. And let's say when he's exposed to red wavelengths of light, what his optical system, just based on very subtle changes in the wavelength, will respond in two radically different ways, different patterns of activation. So we're kind of the physiological basis of him. There's evidence that there's a strong underlying physiological basis for what he reports as seeing two different colors. So that sorting evidence, the physiological evidence, and the fact that Fred simply tells us, look, I'm seeing different colors than you're seeing, this is strong evidence that he's actually seeing two different colors. Okay. Now, Jackson says, look, if let's say red what we'll call red 2, but remember to Fred, it doesn't look anything like our red. If his experience of that color were simply a set of brain states and physiological states and optical nerve states and cone behavior states, then if we just simply learned about what his brain was doing when exposed to those wavelengths, we would have a clear sense of the color he is seeing. But Jackson points out it doesn't, certainly when we sit here in the armchair and try to imagine figuring out what Fred is seeing just based on what his brain and body are doing when he's having this unique color experience, it does seem like we can't do that. So Jackson argues, look, this is actually pretty good evidence that qualia, the content of our mental experiences, are not simply brain and behavior states, because if they were, we could learn all we wanted to know about them just by studying the underlying physiology, but we can't do that. Okay, now Jackson has a similar argument involving Mary. Mary is a talented neuroscientist who studies in the neurophysiology of vision. Unfortunately, Mary's been trapped in a black and white room her whole life, and the only acquaintance she has with the outside world is through a black and white TV monitor. But she's read a lot of black and white books, and she's had a lot of instruction through that monitor, and she becomes an expert in vision, an expert in wavelengths associated with various colors of light across the spectrum. Okay. Now, one day, Mary escapes the room or leaves the room. Maybe it's not as dramatic as an escape. When she walks outside and she sees blue for the first time, Jackson says, look, even though Mary knew all the physical information associated with seeing blue. Again, what the eye cones are doing, what the brain was doing, what wavelengths were one was being confronted with. Mary clearly didn't know what blue looks like. So that was genuinely new information to her when she had her first blue experience. So same idea, right? If the physiological or physical information were enough to fully capture conscious experience, then by knowing that information, Mary would know what blue looked like because she was an expert in that information. But she knows more about that stuff than the rest of us, and she still doesn't know what blue looks like. So that first person experience of blue, that's a mental state that maybe isn't simply a brain or physiological state. So that's Jackson's argument. Okay. So all we wanted to accomplish in this video was just kind of set the table and explain Jackson's two arguments in rather simple terms. Think we've accomplished that. The proof will be how well you do on the discussion board, which will ask you to simply uh, kind of re-explain and kind of apply some of this. Okay, email me with any questions. I hope this was helpful to you, and have a good day.